always just go to defend that. Defend.
I think like
if Arsenal can't sign Rodrigo or Eze, I'm sure many people would like Rafael Leão. Now, there hasn't been tangible rumours with Leão, and to be fair, there has been some. As I said, no credible journalist has spoken on them. So we can pour cold water on Rafael Leão to Arsenal because Fabrizio Romano has spoken about it. Rafael Leão has never been an option for Arsenal. The player will stay at AC Milan this summer, in which if you can't get Rodrigo, you can't get Eze, you can't get Lookman, you can't get Leão. Where the Arsenal pivot and point to in you lot's opinions? Do we leave it and not sign another attacker? Do you have hope for 2 attackers? Do you have hope for 1? Do you think our business is done? Smash the like button, drop a comment, and let me know your thoughts, people, because above everything, we're football fans, innit? Moving away from that, David Ornstein, another credible journalist, has spoken on Eze. There is a lot of talk about Eze's release clause, 60 million plus 8 million. That's the sort of money that Crystal Palace would be looking for. To my knowledge, neither Arsenal nor Tottenham are prepared to pay that level of finance to do the deal. 2-0, and you've fucked it up. Shout out Paris Saint-Germain. And what I'm going to say completely off topic here is one thing that annoys me is racism in general. I think it's very stupid. I think God has blessed the universe, people. It doesn't matter, you know, how boring would life be if we all looked, spoke, ate the same food, all of those things. Variety is the spice of life. You know, whether you're white, black, Muslim, Christian, Asian, you know, whatever your denomination is, yeah, you should celebrate diversity and live together. Nobody is better or worse than anyone. Unfortunately, football mirrors society, and every now and again, the ugly kind of stuff rears its head. It's one thing, racism in real life. It's another thing with the microaggressions, like you see every time they speak on Marcus Rashford. And then you've got probably, well, to be fair, it is 21st century racism. You've got cowards, but online talking nonsense. So, Matthias Tell, keep your head up. All you did is miss a penalty. You didn't shoot no one, you ain't kill no one, you ain't rob no one. Your crime is being black and missed a penalty. Anyways, man, away from that, he's not the first nor the last, but I don't want to put a dampener on this. We know with Arsenal, the situation seemed to be linked with Ethan Nwaniere's future. And I want to ask you a lot, people, bear that in mind. If he was going to leave, clearly Arsenal were lining up a deal for Eze. So as much as you, me, people want Eze, I'm at the point where I don't necessarily think he's the answer on the left-hand side, but we were always told about X Factor and we need to get superstars and have a bunch of good players. You know, look at what City have historically had. Bernardo Silva, Raheem Sterling, this one, that one, Foden. Everyone can play a mix and blend in several positions across the season. And this is what I mean. And I want to let you lot in on how I'm kind of thinking about Eze. I want to know if you lot make sense of this. I'm not saying I agree with any of these points. I'm just painting a picture for the club we love. Let's start with Martin Odegaard's role. Now, if you had Eze last season, clearly Odegaard could have come out, kept out the firing line. Eze could come in. Odegaard in his top form, Eze in his top form, both should fancy that they could take that 10 spot. Us Arsenal fans will be laughing. You've got 2 of those players. But in Arsenal's mind, you've got Nwaniery who can play there. We're jumping to the future, but you've got Nwaniery who could play there, Dalman who can play there, Odegaard is your captain. People don't want to hear this, but Kai Havertz is an option to play there. And actually, that's how you could kind of do a new age 4-4-2. If Kai Havertz plays in that Odegaard role, because he's nowhere near Odegaard technically, but from a tactical point of view, he probably knows what's required of that role. You've got a partnership with him and Gyökeres. If Lewis Skelly inverts, you still technically have it can become a 4-4-2, but in the modern game you're playing like 3 centre mids, or more. Lewis Skelly inverts, but as I said, you've got Nwaniery. You need a pathway for Dalman. Kai Havertz can play in that role. God forbid, but the only way I could see like one of Rice and Zubimendi and like Odegaard and Eze as 2 rotationary 8s or Nwaniery or whatever have you, would be an injury. I don't think, or an in-game kind of thing, rather than we're going to see that on a consistent basis. So you're not going to see a tactical change. I've said several players that in front. Yes, he can play out wide on the left, but he probably does his best magic operating through the 10. I know you could stick him out wide and it looks on paper when you look at the formation that it says left wing, but you could, you know, he could be like a playmaker. He could still invert. But that means that Arsenal don't see him as an out and out left winger, even though I think he would start week in, week out there. And they've obviously, with Madueke, then you throw in outgoings. We don't need outgoings in the sense of there's no PSR pressure and what. Of course, you got to keep an eye on it, but we want outgoings, rightly or wrongly. So what I'm saying is, do they really think Eze is a necessity as much as we might, or as good as we might? Let me know your thoughts. With Wanyeri signing the new deal, the need for Eze or another player in that position was less pressing, and maybe they were then focusing on other areas. It's not that Eze is gone from the agenda. There's a great affection for Eze at Arsenal and vice versa. We need to keep an eye on that situation, but there will be considerations at Arsenal on the price, age profile, and position, folks. So where you look at with that? I don't endorse or condemn these ITKs. The only one I kind of listen to is Hand of Arsenal because of the track record. Big him up. This guy could be right. He could be wrong. AFC Camden has said Arsenal made contact with Eze's people in the last 24 hours to reiterate intention. Arsenal's board only willing to sanction the signing once Fabio Vieira, Trossard, Nelson are sold, as there are too many players in Eze's position and no resale value. We need to get a move on. We do, but then you hear Nelson's only interested in a loan. We'll cover Trossard, but for all the speculation, which there's been a twist today, hold on to the end. Nothing's going on there. Fabio Vieira is in talks with Stuttgart. We hope we can get a move on in that regards. And there's probably some other players that have speculations over their future. Park off the attackers for a sec and focus on Zinchenko. Porto have shown an interest in Zinchenko and are understood to have made contact with Arsenal. Sources have told Give Me Sport, though conversations are still at an early stage, Zinchenko is believed to be open to a potential move. And you would see a bunch of comments that Zinchenko is said to have made floating around the Athletic and on social media. I'm grateful that my girls are not yet at an age where they're exposed to social media and don't have to read nasty stuff about their dad who can't get into the Arsenal team anymore, which is harsh. Obviously, social media is extreme, but it's a madness, really. You don't want to see that. On last season, it was easily the worst season I ever experienced as a professional. The sense of rejection you feel if your manager no longer believes in you, can take the stuffing out of you, even if you're the most resilient guy on the planet, which in theory is true. It is upsetting, but this is a reality. The cold-hearted truth, Zinchenko, rightly or wrongly, the manager don't want to play you in the 10 or the 8. At left back, I'm not going to listen. Your first, and this is where I think people are harsh on Gabriel Jesus and Zinchenko. Obviously, with Zinchenko, his fragilities have risen, and we need better in that role. You know, Lewis Skelly might not be able to invert or have the glee that you have, but he's good enough and he can defend better. Calafiori the same, many others. When you signed for us, Zinchenko, you're absolutely mustard. You know, it was a breath of fresh air to the point where if you weren't playing, we were sitting there and saying we can't create. Unfortunately, your reliability, the pros that you bring, I know the pros that you bring no longer outweigh the cons. There's more cons. It is what it is. Where I think people are a bit harsh to Gabriel Jesus and Zinchenko is because obviously at the time they deserved them contracts. They were at City. They helped us. With Gabriel Jesus, there is the air that you couldn't quite score goals, but it's injuries. Zinchenko, again, we've got better defensively since 2022-23. It's not a strong point of yours. Should you have played in midfield a bit more? Potentially. I don't begrudge you. I want you to leave, clearly. And especially when you come out with comments like this, I hear it. You know, I hear it. But there might not be any offers on the table. There might have been offers that you didn't want to accept. I understand if you want to run down your contract, if your family's cool here, if you think you can prove Mikel Arteta wrong, if you don't feel you can get that money elsewhere, if you're not totally convinced on the projects, I hear it. But if you sit here next season, you can't complain about that. Do you not believe, though, that indirectly that's sending out the backhaul? You know, yeah, big up his daughters and whatnot, and his wife. He did speak about how his wife, well, he says it here. She doesn't want to show that she's affected for fear of upsetting me even more, but every once in a while the mask slips. Of course, that's her man, isn't it? She wants you to play, but the reality is, like, unfortunately, Zinchenko, I hear it and my heart bleeds, but there's no time for emotion and sentiment. We've got a task to do to win the league. You're not good enough. You could be a squad player, but where we're at now, like, the wife thing and all this is irrelevant. She should be upset. But unfortunately, I always find it quite poetic in life that if you was to cry right now, yeah, there's water and salt, right, in your tears. Anyone that's been a little kid and been beat by their grandparents or their mom or whatever, you know, you get them, you know, when you get beat so bad, you want to fall asleep. Remember, and PTSD warning, remember when you cry, yeah, and it goes into your mouth, like the tears, it's water and salt. Don't you think that's what life is? Yin and yang thing. Or am I wrong? Maybe I'm too poetic, but that's life. So my point being, you might be crying now, upset now. You could go somewhere and you're smiling and you're doing your thing. Now, rumors and offers are very different things, people. But at this moment in time, you have to assume that there's no offers that are making sense for all parties, Arsenal, Zinchenko, and etc. Aston Villa have been linked with Leandro Trossard. Some will remember, you know, Trossard's missed against Aston Villa. Aston Villa have held talks with Arsenal over a deal for Trossard. Is it worth, you know, do you sell Trossard and these guys so that you can get Eze or whoever? Or do you, like, on the assumption that you're going to get them? Or do you bring Eze in and then let them go? Clearly, we're going to do the first option. Initial discussions between the two clubs took place on Tuesday as Aston Villa looked to test the Gunners' resolve over the Belgium. Trossard has been informed of the approach and it's understood the decision regarding his future will be left entirely up to the player. It's important to note that this is not the first time the Birmingham club have inquired about Trossard. A similar conversation was held in January when Arsenal were negotiating a new contract with the player, an offer that remains on the table but is not yet signed. Why haven't you signed it, rightly or wrongly? From a player point of view, I can understand, but from a club's point of view, what do we do with this? Because this tells me Trossard wants to keep all of his options open. He might be looking at, Madueke's come in. Eze might not be a left winger, but he might come in. Martinelli, for all of the question marks about him, plays a lot more than you. You might want to go somewhere else where you're going to play a lot more, sign a contract. A theme of Trossard being at this football club has been him scoring and looking quite upset about being on the bench, which I like. Another one that I think is quite disrespected. I just think Trossard, if he was to stay, should be a rotationary option, squad player. He was a super sub, but he's probably easier to move on at this moment in time between him and Martinelli. Back then, Aston Villa were told he was not for sale, as Arsenal were confident that a new contract could be agreed. However, since then, tangible progress has been hard to come by. Trossard is also considering interest from other clubs, with Arsenal valuing him at £18 million, 20.8 million euros, a figure well within Aston Villa's reach, especially with Jacob Ramsey's imminent big money move to Newcastle and amid growing interest in Leon Bailey. Brentford have also apparently been interested as well, people. So 1 minute he's been linked with Brentford, Aston Villa, Brentford, Aston Villa, Fenerbahce, bare teams, but not for all the rumors, nobody's forwarded out the club yet. In July, this website, revealed that Mikel Arteta would prefer to keep Trossard and that the player is open to remaining at the Emirates. Sources have suggested there could yet be an agreement on fresh terms despite months-long stalemate. However, a move could hold appeal given assurances of regular starting role, which is something the Gunners can't guarantee after bolstering their attacking options this summer. With multiple clubs circling and no agreement yet on a new contract, Trossard's future could be one of the most closely watched stories in the final weeks of the transfer window. I hope not, so we can get a move on. Respectable bids for Trossard would likely be considered, though. It's still not guaranteed he will depart Arsenal, even though contract discussions have stalled. Zinchenko has said, imagine this little boy who's dedicated his entire existence to becoming good at one particular thing and then finds at 28 that he's essentially no longer needed. There are others who can do the job for him. It's not a nice feeling. It's not, but this is the reality of life, whether it's romantically, professionally. This is life, really and truly. This is the nature of the beast. He's available to leave before the deadline. The player is given consideration to seeing out the final year of his contract and moving on free. Naturally, Arsenal would prefer a sale this summer. Real Madrid officials have informed Rodrigo that they are ready to listen to offers for him. How many times have we seen that this summer? Both Manchester City and Arsenal are interested, and the Brazilian would be open to joining either team. I mean, there's a reality we don't get either Eze or Rodrigo. Which one would you prefer, if not both people? And do you think he would choose Man City over Arsenal or Arsenal over Man City? This is a bit of a madness, really. As per Swedish paper, the transfer of Gyökeres to Arsenal is now being linked to a shooting and blackmail plot in Stockholm, which is being investigated by police. The shooting reportedly took place at a house in Huddinge, Stockholm, and the target was the relative of a football agent. I mean, you don't want to hear this. 2 shots were fired, but nobody was hit, with investigating police now suspecting the shooting is linked to the extortion plot in relation to the Gyökeres transfer. The agent involved in the deal is believed to have posted an update on social media confirming he was part of the Gyökeres transfer, which subsequently led to blackmail attempts. You don't want to hear that, but this is why I tell people don't be posting things on socials. Reece Nelson would prefer a 1-season loan as opposed to a permanent move. So we're kind of at this mercy. Like, big up Nelson, but it's a bit mad, isn't it, really and truly? It's a bit mad that you have to hear that he would prefer that. Like, we kind of have to forget what people prefer. I understand it, and I think they're within their rights. But to hear Zinchenko's open to running down his deal, Nelson wants a 1-year deal. Berta and everybody at Arsenal, fix up, man. We're meant to be setting it anyways, people. Kiwior is open to leaving for a club where he can be a regular starter. Arsenal are in no rush to sell, however, and none of the clubs tracking Kiwior have yet met their asking price, people. Apparently, Jack Wilshere will not make a return as under 21's head coach, in which I think is wrong anyways. Obviously, with my Arsenal cap on, I think he's Mr. Arsenal. Like, he's come through it. Who wouldn't want him working with the academy because he's done it before and whatnot? But then again, he's clearly got ambitions to manage in the senior game. So we'll be in the same situation. And it seems like we're just looking after our own. Surely the emotions are too raw. You know, what is the point bringing him back when he showed that he would leave at the first thing that made sense? when he was linked with Norwich and Colorado Rapids. And I'm not criticizing Jack Wilshere because everyone needs to elevate and do whatever, but it don't make sense. Get someone who's more likely to stay in their role. Obviously, they're not going to stay forever. Mehmet Ali's obviously advanced, and I think he's in the first team setup at Brentford, people. Everyone's got ambition, people. What is this? About Arsenal. Okay, Trossard talks, nothing to do with Arsenal in Nkunku. This looks like BS. How long before we're linked with a loan move for Jadon Sancho, folks? Eze's apparently chosen Arsenal. Calvert-Lewin going to Leeds. I remember when Arteta first took over and we was linked with him. So yeah, apparently Spurs hijacked the move for Eze, but the player is prioritizing a transfer to the Emirates, people. We've heard talks are ongoing, so we really will have to see how all of this develops.